Winter has arrived and it is colder than anyone expected. For years, there were warnings that a season of consequence was coming, that choices made in comfort would one day be tested in hardship, and that the bill for certain cultural decisions would not stay unpaid forever. Those warnings were dismissed, mocked, clipped into short viral moments, and turned into memes. But the core message was simple and direct. When a society drifts too far from balance, gravity eventually returns it to Earth. What we are witnessing now is not a sudden storm, but the arrival of a long predicted season. And by the time we reach the end of this discussion, the pattern will be impossible to ignore. There was a voice that repeated this forecast with relentless clarity, the late and controversial Kevin Samuels. He argued that modern relationship dynamics were not sustainable, that entitlement without reciprocity would fracture the bond between men and women, and that independence framed as superiority would eventually collide with economic reality. He warned that comfort built on the assumption of endless male provision would erode once men decided to redirect their energy. He described a future where indifference would replace pursuit, where silence would replace validation, and where economic strain would expose vulnerabilities that had long been covered by social rituals. Many laughed when he said winter was coming, yet today the air feels different. The shift did not happen overnight. It unfolded gradually as more men chose withdrawal over confrontation, peace over persuasion, and solitude over struggle. For decades, men were told they were unnecessary, that traditional roles were outdated, that their presence was optional, except when resources were required. Some internalized that criticism and attempted to adapt, others disengaged quietly. Over time, the disengagement became noticeable. Approaches declined. Dates decreased. The constant stream of validation that once flowed freely began to dry up. What once felt like an abundant marketplace of attention started to resemble a ghost town. At the same time, economic pressure intensified. Inflation rose steadily, stretching paychecks thinner each month. Housing costs climbed beyond what single incomes could comfortably manage. Groceries, transportation, utilities, and healthcare all demanded more. In previous eras, many women offset rising costs through partnership, whether through marriage, long term relationships, or a dating culture that often subsidized lifestyle expenses. That system depended on male willingness to participate. When participation declined, the safety net weakened. There is a narrative that modern independence removed the need for men entirely, that professional achievement and personal branding could fully replace partnership. Yet statistics reveal a more complicated picture. Many households still rely on dual incomes to survive in urban centers. Many single individuals, regardless of gender, struggle to meet basic monthly expenses without shared costs. The difference today is that men who once felt socially obligated to shoulder disproportionate burdens have begun questioning that obligation. When obligation dissolves, so does automatic support. A particularly uncomfortable truth lies within dating culture itself. Research has indicated that a significant portion of women admit to accepting dates without romantic interest, motivated instead by free meals or entertainment. While not universal, the phenomenon was widespread enough to influence male perception. Over time, men noticed patterns of one sided investment. They noticed expectations of payment paired with minimal enthusiasm. They noticed conversations framed around what they could provide rather than who they were. Some continued playing the game, but many stepped away. When men step away, the ecosystem changes. Restaurants that once thrived on date nights see fewer reservations. Lifestyle expenses once partially covered through gifts or shared outings must now be financed individually. Beauty industries continue marketing perfection as mandatory, encouraging spending on cosmetics, hair treatments, nails, fashion, and cosmetic procedures. The pressure to maintain appearance does not diminish when income tightens. For some women, this creates a painful trade off between presentation and necessities. Maintaining social visibility becomes expensive, and the absence of external financial support magnifies that expense. Simultaneously, technology reshapes employment. Automation and artificial intelligence increasingly influence administrative, retail, and service sector roles, industries where women have historically held large percentages of jobs. While both genders face disruption, certain white collar and clerical positions are particularly exposed to automation. When wages stagnate and layoffs rise, the promise that career advancement alone guarantees security feels less certain. The confident declaration of self sufficiency encounters the stubborn reality of economic cycles. Online platforms, once advertised as liberation tools, also reveal limits. Subscription based content services present an image of effortless income, yet average earnings for most participants remain modest. Reports suggest that median monthly revenue on such platforms is far lower than viral success stories imply. After platform fees, taxes, and marketing costs, many creators earn sums insufficient to cover rent. The glamorous illusion masks a crowded marketplace where only a small minority captures significant profits. For those who relied on these platforms as primary income, the numbers can be sobering. Meanwhile, men observe quietly. Many have redirected disposable income toward personal hobbies, investments, fitness, or travel. Some pursue education or skill development. Others embrace minimalist lifestyles, reducing expenses to increase savings. The concept of self focus, once criticized as selfish, now feels pragmatic. Without the expectation of courting costs or relationship based spending, budgets stabilize. A single individual living modestly can often achieve financial calm more easily than one navigating high expectation dating culture. Peace, for many, has proven cheaper than performance. Social media reveals another layer. Increasingly, there are public complaints about the decline of chivalry, about fewer men initiating conversations, about perceived emotional distance. Some express frustration that men no longer approach in public spaces. Others critique the expectation that women split expenses on early dates. Yet, it is worth remembering that cultural messaging over recent decades frequently framed unsolicited approaches as intrusive. Men absorbed that message. When behavior changes in response to instruction, surprise at the result appears contradictory. There is also the matter of age and time. Biological realities remain indifferent to ideology. As years pass, dating markets shift, preferences evolve, competition changes. For individuals who postponed long term partnership while prioritizing career or lifestyle, the window for certain outcomes narrows gradually. This is not a moral judgment, but a demographic observation. Fertility rates across developed nations continue declining. Marriage rates have fallen. Loneliness statistics rise among both genders. The difference is that some women who assumed endless optionality are discovering that optionality decreases with time. The conversation becomes more intense when framed around entitlement. For decades, there existed an unspoken assumption that male provision was guaranteed, that even if relationships ended, new suitors would appear. When men collectively reduce participation, entitlement meets scarcity. Scarcity reshapes expectations. Requests for pre date transfers or financial assurances before meetings, once considered fringe ideas, gain visibility online. The justification often centers on preparation costs, yet critics argue that preparation is voluntary and self directed. The debate exposes deeper tensions about responsibility and reciprocity. Government systems add another dimension. Social welfare programs exist to support those in need, yet they face budget constraints and bureaucratic limits. The assumption that public policy can fully replace personal partnership is optimistic at best. Economic downturns strain public resources. When large segments of the population require assistance simultaneously, support networks become thinner. Relying on institutions rather than interpersonal bonds introduces its own risks. It would be simplistic to declare that all women are struggling or that all men are thriving. Reality is more nuanced. Many women maintain stable careers and healthy relationships. Many men face economic hardship and emotional isolation. However, the broader trend indicates a shift in relational economics. When one group publicly devalues the other, long term cooperation erodes. The consequences of erosion manifest slowly until a tipping point reveals the damage. The imagery of winter is powerful because winter strips away illusion. Leaves fall, colors fade. What remains is structure. In prosperous seasons, extravagance flourishes. In harsh seasons, essentials matter. If dating culture emphasized aesthetics, luxury experiences, and curated lifestyles, economic contraction forces reassessment. The ability to cook at home, manage budgets, and build mutual support becomes more valuable than curated social feeds. Those who prepared for austerity navigate it with resilience. Those who assumed endless abundance feel shock. There is also a psychological layer. Validation functions like currency. For many years, women received continuous digital affirmation through likes, comments, and messages. While men also engage online, the volume of attention often differed. If male attention decreases collectively, the psychological impact extends beyond finances. Identity built on constant external feedback can feel destabilized when feedback slows. Some respond with anger, others with introspection. A culture accustomed to applause struggles with silence. Men who disengaged describe a sense of relief. Without pressure to impress or compete, they allocate energy differently. Gym memberships replace bar tabs. Investment accounts replace expensive gifts. Quiet apartments replace chaotic dating cycles. Critics argue that this retreat reflects bitterness, yet many participants describe it as clarity. They perceive the cost benefit analysis of modern relationships as unfavorable. Until incentives change, they prefer independence. The economic data underscores broader uncertainty. Rising housing costs disproportionately affect single occupants. Urban rent increases outpace wage growth. Student loan burdens remain significant. Healthcare premiums climb. In such an environment, partnership can function as risk sharing. When ideological conflict discourages partnership, individuals shoulder full exposure alone. Exposure magnifies vulnerability. Some commentators claim that men will inevitably return because biology demands coupling. Perhaps many will. Human beings seek companionship, yet return does not guarantee identical terms. Once trust erodes, negotiations change. Men who felt undervalued may require different standards. Women who feel pressure may recalibrate expectations. The outcome remains uncertain, but it is unlikely to resemble past dynamics precisely. The notion that entire populations will descend into visible poverty may sound exaggerated. However, subtle financial strain often precedes visible crisis. Increased credit card debt, delayed medical care, reliance on short term loans, and shared housing arrangements signal stress before homelessness appears. Surveys reveal that many Americans live paycheck to paycheck, regardless of gender, when supplemental support from partners declines. Vulnerability surfaces faster. It is essential to avoid dehumanization in this discussion. Economic hardship is not entertainment. No one benefits from widespread suffering. The purpose of analysis is not celebration, but understanding. If certain cultural narratives encouraged unrealistic expectations about independence, confronting data offers an opportunity for recalibration. Balance between autonomy and cooperation may prove more sustainable than extremes. The rhetoric surrounding feminism and traditionalism often oversimplifies complex social evolution. Women entered the workforce in greater numbers for many reasons, including economic necessity and personal aspiration. Men adapted unevenly to shifting norms. Some embraced egalitarian partnerships, others felt displaced. The friction created new ideologies, some empowering, others antagonistic. When antagonism dominates, cooperation declines. What appears to be happening now is a pendulum swing. After decades emphasizing independence from men, some women publicly question why men appear distant, and after decades encouraging emotional suppression, some men publicly explore self development and community outside romantic relationships. Each side adjusts to perceived incentives. The colder climate forces both to evaluate priorities. If winter continues, certain behaviors will fade. Excessive spending on image may decrease as practicality rises. Social media theatrics may lose appeal compared to financial stability. Men may become more selective about partnership, prioritizing mutual contribution over attraction alone. Women may reassess messaging that framed men as optional accessories. These shifts will not occur instantly, but economic pressure accelerates change. There is also the generational factor. Younger cohorts observe the experiences of those slightly older. If they witness financial strain among single professionals in their 30s and 40s, they may adjust earlier. Cultural narratives spread quickly through digital channels. Lessons learned publicly influence private decisions. A generation raised amid high housing costs and economic volatility may value partnership differently than one raised during expansion. Throughout this transformation, the memory of early warnings lingers. When someone repeatedly predicts consequence and later events align with portions of that forecast, credibility increases among supporters. Critics may argue that correlation does not equal causation, yet perception shapes narrative. The idea that winter was predicted enhances the drama of its arrival. However, predictions should not become self fulfilling prophecies. If society frames women as doomed and men as detached, cooperation becomes harder. A healthier outcome involves acknowledging missteps while pursuing balanced expectations. Men and women both contribute to cultural dynamics. Blame alone solves nothing. The current climate offers an opportunity for sober reflection. What does fairness look like in dating? How should expenses be handled? What constitutes respect? How do we balance career ambition with relational goals? How do we prepare financially for economic uncertainty regardless of relationship status? These questions matter more than viral sound bites. Some argue that modern women cannot survive without male provision. Such statements overlook the resilience demonstrated by countless women who manage households independently. Yet, it is equally unrealistic to deny that partnership historically enhanced stability for both genders. The challenge lies in designing partnerships that feel equitable rather than obligatory. As winter deepens, illusions fade, but possibilities remain. Hard seasons reveal character. They encourage discipline, humility, and strategic planning. If individuals recalibrate spending, cultivate skills resistant to automation, and pursue relationships rooted in reciprocity rather than entitlement, stability can return. If pride prevents adaptation, hardship intensifies. The cultural temperature is undeniably cooler. Conversations that once centered on empowerment now include anxiety about rent and groceries, complaints about male absence mixed with reflections on past messaging. Men who once chased validation now guard time and resources. The dynamic has shifted. The question is not whether hardship exists, but how long it lasts and what lessons emerge. Economic cycles eventually turn, yet cultural shifts often persist. If trust rebuilds slowly, dating norms may permanently change. If mutual respect becomes fashionable again, cooperation may increase. If resentment dominates, isolation spreads. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Winter is uncomfortable, but it clarifies. It forces honest assessment of dependency and value. It reveals which structures stand without decoration. It challenges narratives built on perpetual abundance. Whether one views the current moment as consequence or coincidence, the chill is undeniable. In the end, the conversation is less about victory and more about alignment with reality. Markets respond to incentives, people respond to incentives. If incentives discourage partnership, partnership declines. If incentives reward mutual investment, cooperation rises. The present climate suggests a recalibration is underway. There is no joy in predicting suffering, yet ignoring warning signs invites deeper crisis. Economic literacy, emotional maturity, and balanced expectations provide insulation against cold seasons. Those who cultivate them navigate storms more effectively. The landscape ahead remains uncertain, but one principle remains consistent across history. Societies that undermine the value of half their population eventually experience strain. Societies that encourage respect and shared responsibility foster resilience. The current moment feels like a crossroads between those paths. Winter has arrived. What happens next depends on whether lessons are absorbed or dismissed. As this colder climate settles in, another shift becomes visible beneath the surface, and that shift is behavioral recalibration. When incentives change, behavior follows. For years, the dominant incentive structure in modern dating rewarded visibility, charisma, and short term excitement. And social platforms amplified aesthetics, viral moments, and curated lifestyles. The result was an environment where presentation often outweighed practicality. Now, practicality is pushing back. When budgets tighten and uncertainty grows, individuals begin evaluating decisions through a more analytical lens. Attraction alone does not pay rent. Charm alone does not build savings. The recalibration is subtle but persistent. One of the most significant adjustments involves how men allocate resources. Historically, many men were socialized to demonstrate value through provision, paying for dinners, covering trips, offering gifts, and financing experiences functioned as signals of seriousness and competence. In a period where being told that such gestures were unnecessary or even patronizing became common, the signaling lost clarity. When appreciation for provision declines while expectation for it remains, confusion develops. Some men resolved that confusion by eliminating the behavior entirely. They redirected funds toward investments, business ventures, or personal security. The ripple effect is measurable. Fewer spontaneous gestures, more deliberate spending, increased emphasis on financial independence before commitment. At the same time, a cultural tension emerged around standards. Public discourse often celebrated high standards for partners, while simultaneously discouraging the traditional qualities that historically accompanied those standards. For example, a desire for financially stable men persisted even as criticism of male ambition and authority gained popularity in certain circles. That contradiction created cognitive dissonance. Men observed that they were expected to embody stability without being granted respect for the responsibilities required to achieve it. Over time, Some responded by questioning the return on investment. If achievement leads to scrutiny rather than admiration, the incentive weakens. Economic reality compounds these philosophical debates. The cost of forming a household has escalated dramatically in metropolitan regions. A modest apartment in a desirable area can consume a large percentage of income. Childcare expenses rival mortgage payments. Insurance premiums continue climbing. When partnership involves shared goals and shared sacrifices, these burdens become manageable. When partnership feels adversarial, the burdens intensify. The calculus becomes straightforward. Many men conclude that avoiding long term commitments reduces financial exposure. Many women discover that managing expenses alone in high cost environments requires discipline rarely discussed during optimistic career years. The professional landscape also deserves examination. Corporate structures reward specialization, yet specialization increases vulnerability during technological disruption. Administrative roles, marketing functions, and routine analytical tasks are increasingly augmented by artificial intelligence systems. This does not eliminate human value, but it reshapes demand. Workers in adaptable, technical, or physical trades often retain leverage. Those in repetitive cognitive roles face pressure. If a segment of the population concentrated heavily in roles subject to automation, instability becomes unevenly distributed. Preparing for that transition requires foresight. Those who assumed perpetual growth in comfortable office environments may feel blindsided. Beyond employment and dating, there is the question of cultural narrative fatigue. Audiences grow weary of extreme messaging. For years, headlines emphasized empowerment, defined primarily as separation from traditional dependency. While autonomy is valuable, exclusivity breeds imbalance. When independence is framed as superiority rather than option, it alienates potential partners. The fatigue manifests in subtle ways. People disengage from debates. They choose silence over argument. They build parallel communities that reflect their preferences. Online spaces dedicated to self improvement, financial literacy, and male camaraderie have grown quietly. Participation in such spaces signals a pivot from confrontation to consolidation. Another dimension rarely addressed openly is emotional economics. Emotional labor, like financial labor, carries cost. When men perceive that their vulnerabilities are unwelcome or that their concerns are minimized, they internalize or redirect emotional investment. The same applies to women who feel unheard. However, the current narrative suggests that many men chose to minimize emotional exposure in romantic context after repeated experiences of dismissal. They cultivated stoicism not as repression, but as self protection. Over time, this emotional withdrawal reinforces physical withdrawal. If connection feels risky without reward, isolation appears safer. There is also the concept of opportunity cost. Every dollar and every hour invested in dating carries an alternative use. Those alternatives may include fitness training, skill acquisition, travel with friends, or entrepreneurial ventures. When the perceived probability of fulfilling partnership declines, the opportunity cost of dating rises. Rational actors adjust accordingly. This does not imply that love disappears, but it indicates that risk tolerance shifts. During economic uncertainty, individuals favor low risk strategies. High expectation dating culture resembles high risk investment without guaranteed return. In contrast, some women publicly express frustration at declining romantic initiative. They describe social environments where men avoid eye contact or interaction. They interpret this as insecurity or social decline. Yet, from another perspective, it may represent compliance with prior boundaries. For years, public campaigns emphasized personal space and consent to a degree that discouraged spontaneous engagement. Men, uncertain about acceptable thresholds, are on the side of caution. When caution becomes default, spontaneity vanishes. The resulting silence is then perceived as neglect rather than adaptation. Financial strain further complicates perceptions. A man evaluating whether to initiate conversation may consider not only social risk, but also financial implication. If initiating leads to expectations of immediate spending, hesitation increases. This is especially true for younger men facing student debt and stagnant wages. Meanwhile, some women accustomed to traditional courtship may feel undervalued when expenses are shared. The clash reveals unresolved negotiation about modern roles. Housing trends illustrate another layer of complexity. Increasing numbers of adults across genders return to multi generational living arrangements due to cost. Shared housing reduces expenses but alters dating logistics. Privacy diminishes. Perception shifts. Cultural stigma surrounding adult children living with parents lingers despite economic rationale. These pressures influence romantic behavior. Individuals may delay serious dating until achieving independent housing, which becomes harder to secure. The cycle reinforces itself. There is also the psychological weight of comparison. Social media algorithms elevate exceptional lifestyles. Luxury vacations, designer wardrobes, and curated apartments create inflated baselines. When ordinary reality falls short of algorithmic fantasy, dissatisfaction grows. Some women feel compelled to maintain appearances beyond their means to remain competitive in perceived social hierarchies. Some men feel compelled to withdraw entirely rather than compete in expensive arenas. Both responses reflect distortion created by constant exposure to highlight reels. A deeper philosophical question emerges about value exchange. Healthy relationships historically functioned as cooperative enterprises. Each partner contributed resources, whether financial, domestic, emotional, or social. Modern discourse often reduces contribution to income alone while simultaneously devaluing domestic labor. This confusion undermines clarity about what constitutes fairness. If both partners expect to be beneficiaries without being contributors, imbalance follows. The winter metaphor symbolizes recalculation of exchange rates. Contribution regains importance. Another trend gaining traction is international dating. Some men explore relationships abroad, perceiving cultural differences that align more closely with their expectations. Critics argue that such choices reflect escapism. Supporters argue that global mobility expands options. Regardless of motive, the phenomenon signals dissatisfaction within domestic markets. When participants seek alternatives beyond national borders, it indicates structural tension at home. It is important to address the narrative of inevitable collapse carefully. While hardship exists, total societal breakdown remains unlikely in the near term. Developed economies possess resilience mechanisms. However, personal financial instability can occur even in stable nations. The conversation centers on micro level consequences rather than macro apocalypse. An individual unable to secure partnership or stable income experiences personal winter, even if national statistics remain moderate. The generational divide also influences perception. Older generations recall periods when single income households were common and housing affordable. Younger generations navigate gig economies, high debt, and volatile job markets. Advice rooted in outdated economic conditions often fails to resonate. Tension arises when expectations formed decades ago collide with current constraints. Women who were encouraged to delay partnership for career advancement may find that economic returns did not match projections. Men who were encouraged to prioritize earning may find that earning no longer guarantees relational stability. Within this context, accountability becomes contentious. Assigning blame simplifies complex systems but rarely resolves them. Some argue that modern feminist ideology overpromised and underdelivered. Others argue that male disengagement exacerbated inequality. Both claims contain partial truths. Ideologies shape expectations. Behavior shapes outcomes. The current climate reflects cumulative decisions from multiple actors over time. Resilient strategies begin with financial literacy. Budgeting, investing, and skill diversification offer insulation against downturns. Individuals who cultivated emergency savings before crisis navigated with greater confidence. Those who relied on unstable income streams or external support face greater stress. Encouraging practical preparation does not diminish aspiration, it strengthens it. Emotional resilience matters equally. Reframing independence as strength rather than competition reduces hostility. Recognizing mutual dependency as natural rather than weakness fosters cooperation. Winter invites humility. It reminds people that social bonds often function as survival mechanisms rather than accessories. Another angle involves shifting definitions of luxury. For some men, living simply without relational drama feels luxurious. For some women, security and partnership feel luxurious compared to solo struggle. Redefining luxury away from consumerism towards stability may realign incentives. If stability becomes aspirational, behaviors that support it gain traction. Community networks beyond romantic relationships also expand during hardship. Friend groups, professional circles, and family ties provide support. Men who withdrew from dating often strengthen friendships. Women experiencing financial pressure may rediscover value in extended family cooperation. These networks can buffer against isolation while broader dynamics evolve. Education systems may also adapt. As automation threatens certain roles, emphasis on trades, technical skills, and entrepreneurship may increase. Women entering fields previously dominated by men could mitigate job displacement. Men developing communication skills could improve relational prospects. Adaptation, rather than resignation, determines trajectory. The narrative that time is running out adds urgency, but can also induce panic. Panic leads to poor decisions. Rushed marriages for financial rescue often create long term dissatisfaction. Desperation rarely produces healthy bonds. A measured approach grounded in realistic assessment yields better outcomes. Public discourse sometimes exaggerates extremes because controversy generates attention. It is easy to frame the situation as total male withdrawal versus total female collapse. Reality lies between. Many couples continue forming healthy partnerships quietly. Their success receives less attention because it lacks drama. Observing them offers evidence that cooperation remains viable when expectations align. The broader economic environment will likely fluctuate. Interest rates rise and fall. Housing markets cool and heat. Employment sectors expand and contract. Individuals who anchor identity solely to current trends risk instability. Those who cultivate adaptable mindsets weather change more effectively. As winter continues, one outcome appears likely. Standards will recalibrate on both sides. Men may prioritize peace and compatibility over aesthetics. Women may prioritize reliability and mutual support over status signals. The dating market could become less flamboyant and more pragmatic. While this may reduce spectacle, it could increase durability. Ultimately, the season challenges assumptions. It challenges the belief that validation equals security. It challenges the belief that independence eliminates interdependence. It challenges the belief that economic systems can indefinitely absorb social fragmentation. Whether one agrees with the original warnings or not, the evidence of tension is visible. The cold does not discriminate by gender. Both men and women face rising costs and shifting expectations. However, those who adapted early experience less shock. The lesson is not that one side wins while the other loses. The lesson is that sustainable systems require balance, respect, and realistic incentives. As this chapter unfolds, observation replaces speculation. Behaviors speak louder than declarations. Fewer approaches, tighter budgets, delayed marriages, and increased online complaints form a pattern. Patterns reveal direction. Direction suggests that recalibration is not temporary, but structural. The season may eventually soften, cooperation may regain popularity. But if it does, it will likely emerge from a foundation built on clarity rather than illusion. Winter strips away fantasy and exposes fundamentals. Those fundamentals include shared responsibility, prudent spending, and mutual appreciation. The coming years will test adaptability. Individuals who respond with growth rather than resentment will fare better. Communities that encourage constructive dialogue rather than antagonism will stabilize faster. The climate may be cold, but cold climates also breed resilience in those prepared for them. If this season is defined by recalibration, then the next phase is evaluation. After withdrawal comes assessment. After assessment comes restructuring. What we are witnessing is not only a cooling of social dynamics, but a restructuring of expectations that had inflated beyond sustainable limits. Inflated expectations behave like financial bubbles. They expand rapidly during optimism and contract sharply when reality intrudes. The contraction feels abrupt, but it is simply gravity reasserting itself. One area where this contraction is visible is in lifestyle prioritization. For years, certain social circles promoted the idea that personal branding and social capital were equivalent to economic capital. A carefully curated digital presence could supposedly translate into opportunity, sponsorships, and admiration. For a small minority, this was true. For the majority, it produced pressure without proportional reward. Maintaining an image requires spending. Professional photography, fashion cycles, beauty routines, dining in fashionable venues, and travel for content creation all demand resources. When revenue fails to match expenditure, debt fills the gap. Debt quietly compounds until austerity becomes unavoidable. During expansion periods, credit availability masks imbalance. Access to loans and flexible payment plans allows individuals to sustain appearances. When interest rates rise and lenders tighten criteria, illusions collapse. Those who depended on borrowed money to fund image confront repayment schedules. Financial institutions do not negotiate with aesthetics. They operate on math. In that confrontation, many reassess what truly matters. Men observing the shift often draw conclusions about long term compatibility. If potential partners prioritize public display over financial prudence, risk tolerance decreases. Men who once might have overlooked spending habits now scrutinize them. The desire for partnership remains, but the threshold for perceived responsibility rises. This does not reflect hostility. It reflects caution in an environment where errors carry high cost. At the same time, women navigating independence confront structural constraints that empowerment slogans rarely addressed. Earning income independently is commendable, yet taxation, housing scarcity, healthcare costs, and retirement planning require long horizon strategy. Without shared resources, the burden of planning intensifies. Some discover that career progression plateaued sooner than anticipated. Others realized that salary growth did not keep pace with living expenses. The narrative of effortless autonomy yields to spreadsheets and budgeting apps. Another emerging factor is the psychological toll of constant competition. Modern dating culture often resembled an audition process. Profiles, curated images, and filtered personas transformed romance into a marketplace of impressions. Competition fosters anxiety. Anxiety encourages defensiveness. Defensiveness erodes warmth. Over time, both men and women report fatigue. Fatigue leads to withdrawal. Withdrawal reduces opportunity for organic connection. The cycle reinforces itself. Technology magnifies this dynamic. Algorithms reward extreme content because it captures attention. Nuanced discussions about mutual respect attract less engagement than bold declarations of superiority. As a result, extreme voices dominate feeds. Men encounter rhetoric portraying them as disposable. Women encounter rhetoric portraying them as opportunistic. Exposure to these narratives shapes perception even when personal experiences differ. The amplification of extremes distorts baseline reality. In response, some individuals deliberately disengage from algorithmic spaces. They limit social media use, focus on in person communities, and prioritize tangible goals. This detoxification reduces exposure to hostility and restores perspective. Interestingly, those who step away often report improved mental clarity. The absence of constant comparison and debate allows energy to redirect toward constructive pursuits. Economic migration patterns also reflect adaptation. Some leave high cost cities for smaller regions with lower expenses. Remote work enables geographic flexibility for certain professions. Couples who form in these environments may experience less financial pressure than those anchored to metropolitan hubs. However, relocation also separates individuals from established networks, creating new challenges. Another subtle shift involves redefining masculinity and femininity in practical terms rather than ideological slogans. For some men, masculinity increasingly means discipline, financial control, and emotional steadiness rather than dominance. For some women, femininity increasingly means strategic collaboration and resilience rather than performative independence. These redefinitions occur quietly, often outside mainstream commentary. They emerge from lived experience rather than theory. The financialization of relationships created additional distortion. Concepts such as calculating partner market value, quantifying desirability, and ranking income tiers introduced transactional language into intimate spaces. While economic realities cannot be ignored, reducing human connection to metrics undermines empathy. When individuals feel evaluated solely by salary or appearance, defensiveness rises. Winter exposes the limitations of hyper-transactional frameworks. Cooperation thrives on trust, not spreadsheets alone. Demographic trends add urgency to the conversation. Delayed marriage correlates with reduced fertility windows. Biological realities remain constant regardless of cultural shifts. For women who desire children, the intersection of career timing and relationship formation becomes critical. Some now confront compressed timelines. This compression can produce anxiety, which in turn influences partner selection. Decisions made under pressure may prioritize immediate stability over long term compatibility. The consequences unfold gradually. Men face demographic pressures as well. Extended bachelorhood can solidify habits of independence that become difficult to integrate into partnership. Comfort in solitude may reduce motivation to compromise. When both genders acclimate to autonomy, reintroducing interdependence requires intentional effort. Another factor influencing behavior is legal and financial risk associated with marriage. Public discussions about divorce settlements and asset division circulate widely. Some men interpret these discussions as cautionary tales. They respond by avoiding formal commitments or insisting on contractual safeguards. While prenuptial agreements can protect both parties, the very necessity of negotiation signals reduced baseline trust. Rebuilding that trust requires transparency and shared values. It is also worth examining educational messaging. Young women were often encouraged to prioritize career as a safeguard against dependency. This advice emerged from historical inequities where women lacked economic options. However, the pendulum may have swung so far that relational planning received minimal attention. Balancing ambition with partnership requires foresight. Ignoring one dimension for the other creates imbalance. Similarly, young men received conflicting guidance. On one hand, they were urged to respect autonomy and avoid assertiveness that might be misinterpreted. On the other, they were expected to initiate, lead, and provide. Navigating these contradictory expectations fostered uncertainty. Uncertainty reduces initiative. Reduced initiative alters market dynamics. The climate of distrust extends beyond dating into general social interaction. Polarized discourse around gender roles fosters suspicion. Individuals assume adversarial motives before engagement begins. Suspicion prevents vulnerability. Without vulnerability, intimacy stagnates. Winter thus manifests not only economically, but emotionally. Yet hardship often produces innovation. New relationship models may emerge that emphasize transparency from the outset. Clear discussions about financial expectations, career plans, and family goals early in courtship can reduce misalignment later. While such conversations may feel unromantic, they prevent future conflict. Maturity may replace mystique as a valued trait. Another observation involves mental health awareness. Increased discussion of therapy and self reflection offers opportunity for growth. Individuals examining personal patterns contribute to healthier dynamics. Men exploring emotional literacy become more effective communicators. Women exploring accountability strengthen relational trust. Growth on both sides reduces hostility. Cultural memory also plays a role. Previous generations experienced economic downturns that reshaped behavior. The Great Recession influenced millennial attitudes toward risk. Similarly, the current period may influence Generation Z attitudes toward partnership and spending. Patterns learned during formative years persist long after conditions change. There is also the element of pride. Admitting that certain assumptions were flawed can feel humiliating. Pride delays adaptation. Some cling to outdated narratives, even when evidence contradicts them. However, prolonged denial intensifies hardship. Flexibility distinguishes those who recover quickly from those who struggle. The language of victory or defeat oversimplifies reality. The idea that one gender wins while the other loses ignores interdependence. When large segments of women face financial instability, society as a whole bears cost. When large segments of men withdraw from family formation, birth rates decline, affecting long term economic growth. Mutual decline benefits no one. Therefore, the constructive path involves recalibrating toward cooperation grounded in realism. Acknowledging that independence and interdependence coexist allows for nuanced expectations. Recognizing that financial contribution is only one form of value broadens appreciation. Respecting boundaries without extinguishing initiative restores balance. The winter metaphor suggests endurance rather than finality. Seasons change. However, preparation determines comfort during transition. Those who invested in skill development, savings, and emotional maturity enter spring stronger. Those who relied solely on favorable weather must rebuild. In practical terms, this means cultivating financial prudence regardless of relationship status. It means selecting partners based on compatibility and shared goals rather than superficial validation. It means resisting algorithmic extremes that amplify resentment. It means embracing accountability for personal decisions. As the restructuring continues, certain myths dissolve. The myth that perpetual youth guarantees options fades. The myth that career alone guarantees security fades. The myth that men will always pursue regardless of treatment fades. In their place emerges a clearer understanding of cause and effect. This clarity may feel harsh, but it is ultimately empowering. When individuals recognize the levers within their control, they regain agency. Agency differs from entitlement. Agency involves responsibility and action. Entitlement expects outcome without contribution. Winter favors agency. Community dialogue must evolve beyond blame. Constructive criticism should not devolve into hostility. Data should inform conversation rather than fuel antagonism. Scholars, commentators, and everyday participants all share responsibility in shaping narrative. Balanced discourse encourages adaptation. Looking ahead, one can anticipate continued experimentation in social norms. Some may embrace traditional arrangements with renewed appreciation. Others may pioneer hybrid models blending autonomy and partnership. The key determinant will be whether respect underpins these models. Economic pressures will likely persist in cycles. Inflation may moderate, yet structural costs remain elevated. Automation will continue advancing. Therefore, resilience strategies cannot rely on temporary relief. Long-term planning becomes essential. Within this context, the earlier warnings about winter gain symbolic weight. Whether one agrees entirely with the messenger or not, the metaphor captures a collective sensation of cooling expectations and tightening margins. It serves as a reminder that cultural narratives do not operate independently of economics. Ultimately, the path forward rests on recalibrated incentives. When both men and women perceive partnership as mutually beneficial rather than burdensome, engagement will increase organically. When incentives reward responsibility and respect, behavior aligns accordingly. The present moment is not solely about hardship, it is about awakening to realities long deferred. It is about recognizing that sustainable systems require equilibrium. It is about choosing growth over grievance. Winter tests resolve, but it also clarifies priorities. Those who respond with discipline and openness will navigate the season with strength. Those who cling to illusion will experience deeper chill. The opportunity exists for renewal, but renewal demands honest appraisal and deliberate change. As the environment continues to tighten, another layer of reality surfaces that has less to do with romance and more to do with structure. Structure determines sustainability. When social norms drift away from structural balance, strain accumulates quietly until visible cracks appear. What once seemed stable begins to wobble. In the current moment, those cracks are appearing in areas that were previously assumed to be secure. Consider retirement planning. For decades, dual income households provided a buffer for long term savings. Employer sponsored plans, investment portfolios, and shared housing equity offered pathways to security in later years. Single individuals must now shoulder those long term projections alone. Compound interest rewards early discipline, yet many delayed serious financial planning while prioritizing lifestyle or career transitions. As awareness grows about insufficient savings rates nationwide, urgency replaces complacency. The realization that independence requires rigorous preparation shifts attitudes quickly. Insurance markets also reflect vulnerability. Health coverage, disability protection, and long term care planning carry significant cost. In partnership, these burdens distribute across two incomes. Alone, premiums feel heavier. Unexpected medical events can dismantle years of progress. The illusion that youth shields against risk fades as peers experience setbacks. Winter exposes fragility that prosperity concealed. There is also a sociological dimension to prolonged singlehood. Humans are social creatures. Extended isolation can affect mental well being. While some men describe peace and solitude, solitude without community becomes stagnation. Similarly, women navigating independence without emotional support may experience burnout. The narrative that autonomy equals fulfillment ignores the biological need for connection. Sustainable independence includes community ties, mentorship, and shared purpose. As recalibration deepens, conversations around contribution regain seriousness. Domestic skills, once dismissed as outdated, re enter practical discussion. Cooking at home reduces expenses. Basic home maintenance saves repair costs. Budget tracking prevents financial drift. These competencies are gender neutral, yet cultural narratives sometimes frame them as regressive. Economic pressure restores their value. Competence becomes attractive again, not because of nostalgia, but because of necessity. Another emerging shift involves expectations around lifestyle upgrades. The rapid normalization of luxury standards through digital exposure distorted baseline expectations. Designer labels, international travel, and high end dining were portrayed as accessible milestones rather than occasional indulgences. When income fails to sustain these standards, cognitive dissonance arises. Some double down on consumption to preserve image. Others retreat toward minimalism. The latter group often experiences psychological relief from reduced comparison. Professional ambition also undergoes reevaluation. Climbing corporate hierarchies requires time and energy. If long hours do not translate into meaningful compensation growth, motivation declines. Women who delayed family formation for career advancement may question the trade off if advancement stalls. Men who sacrificed relationships to accumulate assets may question the value if personal life remains empty. These reflections reshape priorities. The labor market's transformation through automation continues advancing quietly. Artificial intelligence tools increasingly handle scheduling, analysis, content creation, and customer service. Adaptation requires continuous learning. Those who resist skill development risk obsolescence. Gender distribution across vulnerable sectors influences impact, yet resilience ultimately depends on adaptability rather than identity. Public discourse frequently highlights economic inequality, yet personal financial literacy often receives less attention. Many individuals, regardless of gender, lack foundational knowledge about investment diversification, tax optimization, and risk management. Winter compels education. Podcasts, books, and online courses focusing on personal finance gain popularity during downturns. Awareness spreads that security arises from informed decision making rather than optimism alone. The legal landscape surrounding relationships further shapes behavior. Cohabitation without marriage introduces complex asset questions. Property rights, inheritance planning, and child custody arrangements require clarity. Avoiding these conversations early may lead to conflict later. As more individuals witness complicated separations, caution increases. Formal agreements may become standard rather than exceptional. The demographic imbalance in certain age cohorts adds another variable. In some regions, there are more single educated women than similarly educated men. This imbalance intensifies competition and influences expectations. When supply and demand misalign, behavior adjusts. Women may expand criteria geographically or culturally. Men may narrow criteria due to abundance of choice. Markets, whether economic or relational, respond to ratios. Cultural shifts also influence attractiveness metrics. During prosperity, aesthetics dominate. During austerity, reliability rises. Traits such as financial stability, calm temperament, and long term planning gain prominence. Short term charisma loses some luster when bills accumulate. This does not eliminate attraction, but reframes it. The psychological impact of aging in a highly visual culture cannot be ignored. Digital platforms emphasize youthfulness. As individuals age, maintaining competitive presence requires increasing effort. For women especially, societal pressure regarding appearance can feel relentless. If resources decline while expectations persist, stress escalates. Acceptance of natural progression may increase as economic reality redirects focus toward stability over spectacle. Family structures evolve accordingly. Some individuals choose intentional singlehood, focusing on friendships and career. Others pursue non traditional parenting arrangements. Economic pressure encourages creativity, but also reveals trade offs. Without shared financial support, raising children independently demands significant sacrifice. Fertility trends suggest many delay until circumstances feel secure, yet security becomes harder to achieve. The perception that men are indifferent may partly reflect emotional exhaustion. Repeated exposure to adversarial narratives fosters detachment. Detachment should not be mistaken for cruelty. It often represents self preservation. Similarly, women expressing frustration may be responding to genuine fear about economic instability. Fear, however, can manifest as accusation rather than introspection. Media framing plays a powerful role. Sensational headlines exaggerate extremes to capture attention. Balanced stories about cooperative couples rarely trend. As a result, audiences internalize a distorted image of widespread hostility. Countering this distortion requires conscious consumption of information and deliberate engagement with diverse perspectives. Another practical consideration involves debt burdens, and student loans, credit cards, and auto financing create fixed monthly obligations. Entering a partnership with substantial debt introduces negotiation. Transparency about liabilities becomes essential. Concealing financial realities erodes trust. Winter incentivizes honesty because hidden weaknesses surface quickly under stress. Migration patterns may also influence relational dynamics. Economic downturns often prompt movement toward regions with stronger job prospects. Long distance relationships strain endurance. Relocation decisions affect partner pools. Geographic flexibility becomes an asset in both career and romance. Within professional environments, workplace relationships face new scrutiny. Corporate policies emphasizing risk mitigation limit informal interaction. Fear of misinterpretation discourages socializing. This further reduces organic meeting opportunities. As public spaces become more regulated, digital spaces dominate introductions. Yet, digital introductions often emphasize surface traits over character. Religious and community institutions may experience renewed interest during uncertain times. Historically, hardship drove individuals toward organized support networks. These institutions offer shared values and structured environments for meeting potential partners. Whether secular or faith based, community engagement can counteract isolation. The evolution of expectations around masculinity includes financial competence and emotional steadiness rather than performative dominance. For femininity, it may include adaptability and cooperative mindset rather than performative independence. These shifts reflect practical adaptation rather than ideological reversal. They arise from lived consequences rather than abstract debate. Another important factor involves children growing up observing current tensions. Young boys internalizing narratives of male disposability may withdraw ambition. Young girls internalizing narratives of perpetual independence may undervalue partnership. The stories told in households today shape behavior tomorrow. Responsible messaging matters. Economic pressure often fosters entrepreneurship. Individuals dissatisfied with traditional employment explore business creation. Small enterprises, online services, and freelance work expand. Entrepreneurship carries risk, but also autonomy. Couples who collaborate in business ventures may strengthen bonds through shared purpose. However, entrepreneurial instability can also strain relationships if expectations misalign. Mental health resources become critical during prolonged stress. Anxiety about finances and relationships can escalate into depression. Seeking support is a sign of strength. Men historically avoided therapy due to stigma, yet cultural openness increases gradually. Women facing burnout from juggling independence and expectation may also benefit from structured support. The concept of dignity deserves attention. Dignity arises from self sufficiency combined with mutual respect. When individuals feel used or undervalued, dignity erodes. Rebuilding dignity requires establishing boundaries and honoring them consistently. Winter often strengthens boundaries because tolerance for exploitation declines. Education about long term partnership skills may also gain prominence. Communication, conflict resolution, and shared financial planning are teachable competencies. Schools rarely emphasize them. Families transmit them unevenly. Adults who intentionally study these skills improve relational outcomes regardless of broader climate. In this colder season, patience becomes a scarce resource. Instant gratification culture conditioned many to expect rapid results. Building stability, however, demands delayed gratification. Investments mature over years. Trust develops over time. Winter slows tempo, forcing reflection rather than impulse. Another observation involves shifting social prestige. During exuberant times, flashy consumption commands admiration. During downturns, prudence commands respect. Individuals, once praised for extravagant lifestyles, may face criticism if finances crumble. Those who quietly saved may gain influence. Prestige recalibrates. There is also the question of narrative redemption. Some who once dismissed warnings now reconsider them privately. Publicly acknowledging error may feel risky, yet growth requires humility. Societal maturity increases when individuals revise positions based on evidence. The economic contraction also influences charitable giving. When disposable income declines, donations fall. Nonprofit organizations serving vulnerable populations face strain. This indirectly affects women and men alike who rely on support services. Collective hardship reduces collective generosity. Interpersonal negotiation becomes more explicit. Couples discuss splitting expenses earlier in dating. Clear agreements prevent resentment. While this may reduce romantic mystique, it enhances fairness. Fairness fosters durability. As months progress, some initial panic subsides, replaced by steady adaptation. Humans adjust remarkably well to new baselines. Once expectations reset, dissatisfaction decreases. The shock phase gives way to strategic planning. Technological change continues regardless of social tension. Remote collaboration tools expand. Digital currencies evolve. Financial literacy around emerging technologies becomes advantageous. Those who leverage innovation wisely may secure new income streams. Ultimately, the season tests values. Do individuals prioritize ego or stability? Do they choose resentment or recalibration? Do they seek scapegoats or solutions? The answers determine personal outcomes more than abstract cultural debates. The present moment can either entrench division or inspire reform. Reform requires recognizing interdependence without surrendering autonomy. It requires balancing ambition with empathy. It requires rejecting narratives that glorify antagonism. Winter does not last forever, yet the habits formed during winter often persist. Discipline learned under pressure strengthens character. Cooperation forged under strain deepens trust. Those who internalize lessons now will shape a more balanced environment later. The chill in the air serves as a reminder that comfort is not guaranteed. Preparation matters, mutual respect matters, financial prudence matters, emotional maturity matters. These fundamentals transcend gender debates. As the restructuring unfolds, clarity replaces spectacle, illusion fades, incentives realign. Individuals who embrace responsibility navigate the cold with confidence. Those who resist reality feel sharper winds. As this prolonged adjustment continues, another pattern becomes visible that is less dramatic but more consequential. It is the shift from emotional narratives to data driven thinking. When resources tighten, sentiment yields to numbers. Budgets become more persuasive than slogans. Spreadsheets become more authoritative than trending opinions. This movement toward measurable reality changes how individuals evaluate their lives and their relationships. For example, the concept of lifestyle compatibility now carries more weight than abstract attraction. Two people may share chemistry, yet, if their financial philosophies diverge sharply, long term stability weakens. One partner prioritizing aggressive saving while the other prioritizes visible consumption creates constant friction. During prosperous seasons, such friction can be masked. During constrained seasons, it becomes unavoidable. As a result, financial transparency earlier in courtship may become standard practice rather than taboo. Creditworthiness also emerges as a quiet factor in partner evaluation. In an era where mortgages require strong credit profiles and stable income histories, individual financial decisions influence shared future opportunities. Poor credit limits housing options and increases borrowing costs. This reality encourages personal accountability. Romantic idealism alone cannot secure favorable loan terms. Responsibility becomes attractive not because of moralizing, but because of practical implications. Another development involves reevaluating what success looks like. For many years, success was displayed externally through possessions and experiences. Increasingly, success may be defined internally through peace, savings, and flexibility. The ability to weather job loss without panic may be valued more highly than owning luxury items. This internalization of success reduces pressure to compete publicly and redirects focus toward resilience. Within this context, conversations about partnership may evolve from entitlement to negotiation. Negotiation implies mutual benefit rather than unilateral expectation. It involves clear articulation of needs and willingness to compromise. While negotiation lacks the glamour of fantasy romance, it produces more durable agreements. As people mature through economic adversity, negotiation skills improve. The broader economy reinforces this maturation. Interest rate fluctuations, global supply chain disruptions, and geopolitical uncertainty remind individuals that macro forces influence micro outcomes. Recognizing this interconnectedness fosters humility. Personal planning must account for variables beyond control. Shared planning within relationships mitigates risk. Entrepreneurial ventures also adapt to new consumer behavior. Businesses catering to luxury may experience contraction, while those offering affordability and practicality gain traction. Service providers in education, financial advising, and home efficiency may see growth. These shifts influence employment opportunities and income stability across sectors. A subtle yet meaningful change is the reemergence of mentorship. Younger adults facing uncertainty seek guidance from those who navigated previous downturns. Mentors provide perspective and practical advice. Cross generational dialogue can correct misperceptions and reduce polarization. Wisdom often resides in lived experience rather than trending discourse. In dating dynamics, the emphasis on shared values intensifies. Political or ideological alignment once dominated compatibility discussions. Now, financial philosophy, work ethic, and long term planning may take precedence. Couples recognizing shared priorities build stronger foundations than those united solely by attraction. The issue of time allocation also becomes central. Individuals reassess how they spend hours previously devoted to entertainment or social comparison. Investing time in skill acquisition, physical health, and networking yields tangible benefits. Idle consumption feels wasteful in constrained circumstances. Productivity gains prestige. Physical health intersects with financial stability. Medical expenses represent significant risk. Preventive care, exercise, and nutrition become investments rather than vanity pursuits. Men and women who prioritize wellness reduce vulnerability to unforeseen costs. This pragmatic framing encourages sustainable habits. Housing strategies diversify as well. Co ownership among friends, intentional community living, and cooperative housing models gain attention. These arrangements distribute cost and create social support. While unconventional in some contexts, they reflect adaptive creativity in response to high prices. Technology facilitates new forms of collaboration. Remote partnerships in business or creative projects allow individuals to generate income beyond local markets. Couples combining complementary skills may launch ventures that buffer against corporate instability. Collaboration replaces competition as survival strategy. Legal awareness grows alongside financial awareness. Understanding contractual obligations, tax implications, and estate planning becomes part of adult education. Those who ignore these complexities risk expensive mistakes. Winter rewards preparedness. The emotional dimension of recalibration continues evolving. Pride gradually softens when confronted with persistent evidence. Some who once dismissed the importance of partnership reconsider its stabilizing effect. Others who romanticized perpetual bachelorhood reconsider the benefits of shared life. Extremes moderate as reality asserts itself. There is also an emerging appreciation for quiet competence. Individuals who consistently show up, meet obligations, and communicate clearly stand out amid volatility. Flashy charisma loses influence compared to reliability. This cultural shift may encourage deeper connections. The workplace dynamic adapts too. Companies increasingly value adaptability and cross functional skills. Employees who continuously upgrade abilities secure greater bargaining power. Women and men alike benefit from cultivating technical literacy and strategic thinking. In family planning decisions, practicality informs timing. Prospective parents calculate childcare costs, parental leave policies, and long term educational expenses. Spontaneity yields to planning. While some lament reduced romance, others appreciate clarity. Community engagement strengthens as isolation proves unsustainable. Volunteer groups, local events, and professional associations provide networking and belonging. Participation in such networks can facilitate meeting compatible partners organically without reliance on algorithms. The narrative of scarcity can produce fear, but it can also produce discipline. Disciplined individuals channel fear into action. They eliminate unnecessary subscriptions, renegotiate contracts, and build emergency funds. Each small action compounds into security. Another layer involves cultural storytelling. Films, literature, and media reflect societal mood. Themes of resilience, cooperation, and rebuilding may replace themes of indulgence and rebellion. Art often mirrors economic climate. The notion of male indifference may transform into measured selectivity. Rather than disengagement rooted in resentment, some men may approach relationships cautiously with clear standards. Similarly, women recalibrating expectations may prioritize character over spectacle. Mutual selectivity can enhance compatibility. Public policy may adjust gradually in response to demographic shifts. Governments concerned about declining birth rates might introduce incentives for family formation. However, policy alone cannot manufacture trust. Cultural change remains essential. Education systems might incorporate financial literacy and relationship skills into curricula, acknowledging that economic survival and social stability are intertwined. Preparing future generations for balanced adulthood reduces future cycles of excess and contraction. Personal branding trends may pivot toward authenticity over perfection. As audiences grow skeptical of curated illusions, genuine transparency may attract loyalty. Influencers who share realistic budgeting and life planning may gain credibility. Work life balance also receives renewed focus. Individuals question relentless pursuit of status if it undermines health or relationships. Balance does not imply laziness, but strategic allocation of energy. Another observation concerns international comparisons. Observing economic patterns in other developed nations reveals similar challenges of rising costs and delayed marriage. The phenomenon is not isolated to one culture. Recognizing global trends tempers local blame and encourages broader solutions. The language used in discourse may soften over time. After prolonged tension, fatigue encourages moderation. Dialogue emphasizing collaboration may replace antagonistic rhetoric. This transition requires leadership from thoughtful voices across communities. Financial independence remains valuable, yet its meaning evolves. Independence becomes synonymous with preparedness rather than isolation. Individuals capable of supporting themselves choose partnership from desire rather than necessity, which strengthens bonds. As recalibration stabilizes, new norms solidify. Shared expense models in dating become common. Discussions about future goals occur earlier. Social circles normalize pragmatic planning without stigma. The winter metaphor continues guiding interpretation. Cold seasons demand conservation of energy and careful resource allocation. Communities that coordinate efforts endure more comfortably than those fragmented by distrust. The experience of hardship often deepens gratitude for simple pleasures. Home cooked meals, quiet evenings, and meaningful conversations regain prominence over expensive outings. Such shifts reduce financial strain and enhance intimacy. Leadership in both personal and public spheres requires realism. Leaders acknowledging challenges while proposing actionable solutions inspire confidence. Denial or exaggeration undermines credibility. Ultimately, the recalibration underway reflects maturation. Societies oscillate between exuberance and restraint. The present restraint invites growth rooted in evidence rather than impulse. As individuals internalize these lessons, the atmosphere gradually changes from panic to preparation. Preparation generates confidence. Confidence reduces hostility. Reduced hostility fosters cooperation. The unfolding story remains dynamic, yet one principle persists. Sustainable systems require balanced contribution and realistic expectations. Winter clarifies this truth more effectively than any debate. As this transition continues to unfold, another dimension becomes clear. that extends beyond economics and into identity. For years, identity was often constructed around external affirmation. Social circles, online followers, workplace titles, and romantic desirability formed pillars of self perception. When one or more of those pillars weakens, individuals confront a quieter question: who am I without constant validation? Winter forces that question into the open. Men who stepped away from relentless pursuit discovered that silence reveals character. Without the distraction of chasing approval, they began evaluating habits, discipline, and long term direction. Some improved their health, not for display, but for longevity. Some invested in certifications or technical skills that increase market value. Others built side businesses slowly and deliberately. The absence of social noise created mental space for self audit. That self audit often exposed weaknesses previously masked by busy schedules and romantic drama. Improvement followed clarity. Women experiencing reduced external affirmation faced a similar crossroads. Without predictable streams of attention, self worth had to be anchored internally. That transition is not simple in a culture saturated with appearance based reinforcement. However, those who reoriented toward intrinsic confidence often emerged stronger. Intrinsic confidence depends less on fluctuating feedback and more on competence, purpose, and self respect. Purpose itself becomes central during constrained seasons. When consumer indulgence slows, purpose fills the void. Volunteering, creative projects, mentorship, and community initiatives provide meaning independent of market conditions. Individuals grounded in purpose demonstrate resilience regardless of relational status. The workplace also reveals new patterns. Employers increasingly reward output rather than presentation. Remote environments emphasize measurable results over office charisma. Employees who adapt to the shift secure stability. Those reliant on visibility without substance struggle. Merit regains primacy over performative presence. The dating landscape continues evolving quietly. Speed and spectacle lose influence. Slow and deliberate connection gains value. Individuals seek deeper compatibility signals such as aligned daily routines, shared financial philosophies, and similar energy levels. Flashy gestures become less persuasive than consistent behavior. Risk tolerance declines across demographics. In prosperous cycles, people accept higher relational and financial risk because margins feel wide. In narrow cycles, caution dominates. Long term commitment may paradoxically feel safer than serial short term engagements that drain resources. Stability becomes attractive. Family influence re-enters conversation as well. Parents who witnessed earlier economic volatility often advise prudence. Their counsel, once dismissed as overly cautious, now appears prescient. Multi generational dialogue shapes choices about housing, saving, and partnership. There is also a reevaluation of time horizons. Instant gratification culture encouraged short cycles of reward. Economic strain highlights the value of 5 year and 10-year planning. Individuals who adopt long range thinking make decisions differently. They evaluate career moves based on sustainability, not trendiness. They evaluate relationships based on durability, not excitement alone. Another noticeable change involves transparency about expectations. In prior years, certain desires were implied rather than stated. Now, clarity prevents misunderstanding. Discussions about whether expenses will be shared, whether relocation is acceptable, or whether children are desired occur sooner. This upfront honesty may reduce romance for some, but it prevents future disillusionment. Technology continues reshaping opportunity. Artificial intelligence tools enable individuals to enhance productivity and create new services. Those who learn to leverage such tools gain competitive advantage. Adaptability, once again, distinguishes those who thrive. Consumer psychology shifts under pressure. Impulse purchases decline. Discount hunting increases. Subscription fatigue sets in. Individuals audit recurring expenses and cancel non-essentials. These micro adjustments accumulate into macro stability. The conversation around accountability matures slowly. Blame narratives lose energy when practical tasks demand attention. Paying bills, improving credit scores, and acquiring skills leave little room for ideological sparring. Action displaces argument. Educational attainment patterns may also shift. Fields perceived as stable attract increased enrollment. Technical and vocational training regain respect. Prestige degrees without clear income pathways face scrutiny. Return on investment calculations influence academic decisions. Social norms surrounding celebration evolve too. Large, extravagant events become less frequent as cost awareness rises. Intimate gatherings and modest ceremonies increase. Reducing financial strain during milestones supports long-term stability. The psychological impact of recalibration includes increased appreciation for routine. Predictability provides comfort during uncertain times. Couples establishing shared routines experience stronger cohesion. Singles cultivating disciplined daily structures experience greater peace. Another aspect involves the recalibration of expectations regarding partner income. In previous cycles, high earners commanded disproportionate attention. As economic volatility spreads, reliability across income levels becomes attractive. A moderate but stable earner may appear preferable to a high earner in a volatile field. Community cooperation strengthens in localized settings. Neighborhood groups organize resource sharing and information exchange. Informal childcare networks emerge among trusted peers. These grassroots systems reduce dependence on expensive services. Spiritual reflection often intensifies during hardship. Individuals reconsider values beyond material acquisition. Gratitude practices and mindfulness gain traction. Such practices stabilize mood and improve decision making. Interpersonal respect emerges as non negotiable. When margins narrow, tolerance for disrespect diminishes. Individuals prefer fewer but healthier relationships. Quality eclipses quantity. Another subtle trend involves digital minimalism. Constant exposure to curated lifestyles fosters dissatisfaction. Reducing screen time diminishes comparison and restores perspective. Focus shifts from broadcasting life to living it. The narrative that men and women are adversaries gradually loses appeal among those experiencing real world responsibilities. Cooperation becomes practical rather than ideological. Shared rent and shared meals matter more than online applause. Financial partnerships may also take new forms. Joint investment accounts and shared budgeting apps become common among serious couples. Transparency builds trust and accelerates wealth accumulation. The importance of emergency funds becomes widely recognized. 3 to 6 months of expenses saved transforms anxiety into confidence. Those who achieve this milestone experience tangible relief. Career mobility becomes strategic rather than reactive. Individuals evaluate industries for long-term viability before transitioning. Lateral moves that improve stability may replace risky leaps toward prestige. Another outcome of this climate is reduced tolerance for performative activism. Individuals prioritize tangible contributions over symbolic gestures. Real-world service supersedes online signaling. Friendships gain renewed importance. In absence of romantic certainty, strong friendships provide emotional and practical support. Groups that encourage growth rather than indulgence flourish. The conversation around child rearing shifts toward feasibility. Prospective parents assess not only desire, but readiness. This sober assessment may delay births, but enhances preparedness. Credit culture itself may undergo transformation. Awareness of compounding interest and debt traps discourages reckless borrowing. Financial literacy initiatives gain momentum. The language of empowerment evolves. Empowerment becomes synonymous with competence and resilience rather than defiance. Cooperation with others no longer contradicts strength. The winter metaphor continues guiding perspective. Just as farmers prepare soil during dormant months, individuals prepare foundations during constrained seasons. Foundations built now determine prosperity later. Another development involves the recalibration of beauty standards. When resources tighten, elaborate maintenance routines become less feasible. Natural presentation gains acceptance. This shift reduces financial burden and stress. Mentorship among peers also increases. Individuals share budgeting strategies, career tips, and relationship insights. Collective wisdom accumulates. Corporate cultures emphasizing work life integration rather than burnout attract talent seeking balance. Employees value flexibility and stability. The perception of luxury further evolves. Freedom from debt feels luxurious. Control over schedule feels luxurious. Emotional security feels luxurious. Financial discussions between partners become normalized rather than awkward. Shared spreadsheets replace assumptions. Assumptions often breed resentment. The environment also encourages gratitude for incremental progress. Paying off a credit card or achieving a savings goal generates satisfaction that flashy purchases cannot match. Public discourse may gradually pivot from confrontation to collaboration as individuals recognize shared challenges. Collective resilience requires unity. The recalibration underway is not glamorous. It lacks spectacle. Yet it builds substance. Substance sustains. As adaptation continues, a quieter confidence emerges among those who embrace responsibility. That confidence is not loud but steady. It does not seek applause but produces results. The season remains cool, but individuals wrapped in discipline, clarity, and mutual respect navigate it with stability. The transformation is ongoing, yet its direction suggests maturity rather than collapse. As the season of reckoning stretches forward, something even deeper begins to shift beneath the economic recalibration and the relational reset. It is the collapse of illusion as currency. For a long time, illusion functioned as social capital. Perception could override reality. Presentation could obscure weakness. A carefully framed narrative could compensate for structural instability. But illusion requires continuous energy to maintain. When energy becomes scarce, illusion fades. The fading of illusion exposes fundamentals. Fundamentals are not glamorous, they are quiet. They involve discipline, foresight, patience, and reciprocity. In an era where speed and spectacle dominated attention, fundamentals felt outdated. Now they feel essential. Those who built quietly during louder times now appear stable. Those who relied on momentum without foundation now face reconstruction. Another layer of the shift is the redefinition of leverage. Leverage in relationships once derived heavily from perceived desirability and social status. Now, leverage increasingly derives from stability and reliability. A person who can navigate economic uncertainty calmly becomes valuable. Emotional steadiness in a volatile environment is rare. That rarity increases its worth. For men who withdrew from environments they perceived as hostile or unbalanced, the intervening time has not been idle. Many have cultivated internal leverage. They strengthened financial positions, honed skills, improved physical health, and established boundaries. When they re enter relational spaces, they do so with different criteria. Attraction alone is insufficient. Respect and alignment become prerequisites. For women confronting tightened margins, the recalibration often involves reassessing how power was defined. If power was equated with independence detached from cooperation, the limitations of that model now reveal themselves. True strength often involves knowing when to collaborate and when to lead. Interdependence is not weakness, it is strategic alignment. There is also a growing awareness that modern convenience masks fragility. Delivery services, subscription entertainment, and automated systems created the impression of effortless living. When inflation or instability disrupts these systems, individuals rediscovered the value of self sufficiency. Cooking, repairing, budgeting, planning. These acts are not regressive. They are empowering because they reduce vulnerability. The housing market continues exerting pressure. Rising prices and interest rates challenge first time buyers. Rent increases outpace wage growth in many regions. This reality alters the timeline for household formation. Couples may delay purchasing property until financial footing stabilizes. Singles may share space longer than previous generations. These adaptations reshape expectations. Career ambition also undergoes refinement. Our prestige titles matter less than secure income streams. Professionals pivot toward industries resistant to automation and cyclical collapse. Trades, healthcare, infrastructure, and technical services attract renewed respect. The perception of white collar immunity fades. Another subtle transformation involves language itself. Terms once used casually now carry weight. Words like provision, protection, partnership, and contribution regain clarity. Cultural debates strip them of nuance. Economic reality restores context. Provision is not dominance. Protection is not control. Partnership is not submission. Contribution is not exploitation. When definitions stabilize, cooperation improves. There is also a psychological shift from entitlement to gratitude among those who adapt. Entitlement breeds dissatisfaction because expectations rarely match reality. Gratitude fosters resilience because it acknowledges progress rather than perfection. Individuals practicing gratitude experience less volatility in mood and decision making. The social cost of adversarial narratives becomes clearer with time. Communities divided along gender lines struggle to address shared challenges. When energy is spent proving superiority, little remains for problem solving. Winter exposes the inefficiency of division. Another development is the rise of pragmatic mentorship between genders. Rather than competing rhetorically, some individuals exchange insight. Men share financial strategies. Women share organizational and communication strengths. Mutual learning replaces rivalry. Collaboration yields better outcomes than isolation. The digital dating ecosystem continues evolving. Algorithms that once prioritized novelty now struggle to retain engagement amid fatigue. Users report burnout from endless swiping and superficial interaction. This exhaustion encourages alternative approaches. In person events, curated introductions, and community based meetings regain traction. Financial transparency extends beyond romantic partnerships into friendships. Open discussions about salary ranges, investment strategies, and debt reduction become normalized among trusted peers. Collective knowledge accelerates growth. The recalibration also affects expectations around gender roles in domestic life. Practicality dictates distribution of tasks based on skill and schedule rather than ideology. Efficiency replaces performance. Households functioning smoothly experience less stress. Another factor involves long term health planning. As medical costs climb, preventive measures become priority. Regular exercise, balanced diet, and stress management are framed as investments rather than hobbies. Couples encouraging each other's health habits strengthen bonds. The concept of luxury evolves further. Time without financial anxiety feels luxurious. Freedom from comparison feels luxurious. Stability feels luxurious. These redefinitions reduce pressure to compete materially. Cultural memory of previous downturns informs present strategy. Individuals who observe parents navigate recession recall the importance of savings and caution. Lessons once dismissed as overly conservative now resonate. The recalibration extends to expectations of romantic pursuit. The idea that one side should carry disproportionate initiation loses traction. Mutual interest requires mutual effort. Balanced pursuit fosters respect. Professional networking also adapts. Relationships built on transactional exchange weaken under stress. Networks grounded in genuine support endure. Authenticity outperforms opportunism. There's increasing recognition that narratives predicting total collapse oversimplify complex systems. While hardship exists, adaptation is equally real. Humans are remarkably resilient when motivated by necessity, and in education systems may incorporate broader life skills, recognizing that academic knowledge alone does not ensure stability. Budgeting, negotiation, and emotional intelligence become core competencies. Family structures diversify in response to constraint. Extended families pool resources. Cooperative childcare reduces expenses. These models, once stigmatized, gain practicality. The idea of masculine stoicism also evolves. Emotional control remains valuable, but suppression gives way to strategic expression. Men articulating boundaries calmly demonstrate strength rather than hostility. For women, strategic softness may replace combative independence in certain contexts. Softness here does not imply weakness, but receptivity and adaptability. Balanced polarity fosters harmony. The influence of macroeconomics continues shaping micro decisions. Inflation data, employment reports, and interest rate announcements influence household planning. Financial literacy becomes mainstream conversation. The recalibration also impacts creative industries. Audiences gravitate toward content reflecting realism rather than fantasy. Stories emphasizing perseverance resonate more than escapist indulgence. There is a renewed emphasis on craftsmanship and tangible production. Skills producing physical results provide security in uncertain times. This may inspire a renaissance in trades and local manufacturing. The perception of male withdrawal as indifference gradually reframes as selective engagement. Men choosing environments aligned with their values appear more intentional than detached. Similarly, women refining expectations may attract higher quality partnerships through clarity rather than demand. Clear communication reduces misunderstanding. The winter metaphor remains instructive. Cold seasons encourage conservation and strategic planning. Communities that share resources endure more comfortably than isolated individuals. As adaptation deepens, panic subsides. Steady discipline replaces emotional reaction. Individuals build routines that support long term security. Another important development is the recalibration of social status indicators. Being debt free may command more respect than owning luxury items financed through credit. Stability becomes aspirational. Cultural discourse may gradually soften as extreme rhetoric proves unproductive. Dialogue grounded in practicality gains credibility. The long term effect of this period may be generational maturity. Those who come of age during constraint develop realistic expectations and balanced ambitions. Ultimately, this chapter is less about gender triumph and more about systemic correction. Systems drift out of balance when incentives misalign. Correction feels uncomfortable, but restores equilibrium. As the air remains cool, clarity sharpens. Illusion fades. Fundamentals endure. Those who embrace responsibility, cooperation, and discipline position themselves for sustainable progress when the season shifts again. As this long recalibration matures, a final layer begins to crystallize, and that layer is consequence meeting clarity. Not dramatic collapse, not theatrical ruin, but the quiet and unavoidable alignment between choices and outcomes. For years, many social decisions were insulated from immediate feedback. There was cushioning, there was abundance, there was distraction. Now the cushioning is thinner, feedback is quicker, outcomes are clear. One of the most significant developments in this colder climate is the revaluation of time. Time is no longer treated as an endless resource. The realization that certain windows narrow with age changes behavior. Delayed partnership, delayed savings, delayed health maintenance all carry measurable cost. This awareness introduces urgency, but it is a focused urgency rather than panic. It is the understanding that procrastination compounds just as interest does. Men who once drifted through extended adolescence find themselves confronting long term positioning. Living minimally and peacefully may provide short term comfort, but legacy questions eventually surface. What is being built? What will endure? Is solitude a strategy or a placeholder? These questions sharpen ambition in some and refine direction in others. Women who once felt surrounded by optionality confront the mathematics of choice. Opportunity feels infinite at 25. It feels selective at 35. It feels strategic at 40. This progression is not condemnation. It is biological and social reality intersecting. When recognition replaces denial, decisions become intentional rather than reactive. Another visible shift involves the recalibration of standards. Standards, once inflated by social comparison, now adjust to practicality. Income expectations balance against cost of living realities. Lifestyle desires align with actual earning capacity. A grounded understanding of what is sustainable replaces fantasy projections. In the professional sphere, loyalty dynamics shift. Companies that once offered stability now restructure rapidly in response to market forces. Employees recognize that institutional loyalty may not be reciprocated. As a result, personal development and portable skills become priority. Self reliance grows not as rebellion, but as necessity. The dating environment continues evolving in parallel. Where once grand gestures dominated first impressions, now consistency commands respect. A reliable schedule, clear communication, and modest but steady effort signal seriousness more effectively than lavish outings. Substance overtakes spectacle. There is also an emerging respect for patience. Patience was previously interpreted as lack of urgency or lack of desirability. Now, patience represents discernment, individuals willing to wait for compatibility rather than settling for temporary validation demonstrate maturity. The economic climate reinforces careful risk assessment. High leverage strategies that once seemed attractive now appear precarious. This influences both investment decisions and relationship commitments. People seek stability over volatility. Community structures further adapt. Cooperative living arrangements, skill sharing networks, and neighborhood alliances strengthen resilience. These arrangements reflect pragmatic solidarity rather than ideological movement. Shared resources reduce individual strain. A particularly important development involves narrative responsibility. Voices that once thrived on outrage begin losing influence among those fatigued by division. The market for perpetual conflict shrinks as practical concerns dominate. Audiences gravitate toward solution oriented discourse. Health awareness continues rising as individuals recognize that physical decline compounds financial vulnerability. Chronic illness increases expenses and reduces earning potential. Preventive discipline becomes strategic asset. Financial planning conversations grow increasingly technical. Individuals discuss index funds, diversification, tax advantaged accounts, and debt snowball methods with fluency once reserved for entertainment gossip. Economic literacy becomes social currency. The recalibration also reshapes attraction criteria. Emotional intelligence becomes a central metric, calm under pressure, adaptability during uncertainty, and willingness to collaborate replace superficial dominance or hyperindependence as desirable traits. Another emerging pattern involves reconciliation with tradition without regressing into rigidity. Some rediscover value in structured roles while rejecting oppressive elements of the past. Balanced reinterpretation replaces extreme rejection. As months pass, the shock phase transitions into normalization. What once felt like crisis becomes baseline. Baseline stability allows forward planning. People design 5-year trajectories grounded in realism rather than wishful thinking. Marriage conversations regain seriousness in some circles. Rather than impulsive union driven by excitement, proposals stem from strategic partnership goals. Shared spreadsheets accompany shared vows. While less cinematic, such foundations reduce future conflict. At the same time, individuals who choose singlehood do so with clearer intention. Singlehood becomes a deliberate path requiring financial and emotional preparation, not an accidental byproduct of avoidance. The concept of dignity continues gaining prominence. Self respect requires honoring boundaries and acknowledging limits. Dignity discourages exploitation in either direction. When both parties value dignity, negotiation becomes cooperative rather than adversarial. There is also a deeper spiritual reckoning occurring quietly. Material abundance once masked existential questions. As consumption slows, meaning occupies center stage. Individuals ask what kind of life aligns with their values rather than what kind of life garners applause. Technological acceleration does not pause during recalibration. Automation expands. Digital assets evolve. Remote collaboration normalizes. Those who integrate technology intelligently amplify earning potential. Those who ignore it risk stagnation. Educational choices increasingly reflect economic pragmatism. Fields promising high debt and uncertain income face skepticism. Apprenticeships and certifications gain credibility. The cultural fixation on youth gradually softens. Experience and wisdom regain appreciation. Individuals in their 40s and 50s who maintained discipline during exuberant years now demonstrate stability that younger cohorts respect. Friendship circles shift composition. Those committed to growth remain. Those attached to indulgence drift away. Social ecosystems refine themselves based on shared trajectory. Another aspect of this winter is the reduction of illusion around government rescue. Public systems provide support but cannot replace personal planning. Realism about institutional limits encourages individual preparation. The recalibration also influences parenting styles. Parents emphasize financial education and resilience to children earlier than previous generations. Lessons about saving, budgeting, and accountability become routine. There is increased awareness that social media rarely reflects average reality. Exposure to curated success once distorted expectations. Widespread acknowledgement of this distortion reduces its psychological power. In romantic dynamics, performative feminism and performative masculinity both lose appeal. Practical femininity and practical masculinity rise instead. These expressions focus on contribution and cooperation rather than ideological display. The broader economy may eventually stabilize, but behaviors learned during constraint will persist. Savings habits, cautious investment strategies, and transparent communication patterns become embedded. The metaphor of winter evolves from threat to teacher. Cold conditions train endurance. They sharpen focus. They reward preparation. As this period extends, fewer people argue about who is at fault, and more people focus on what is required. Responsibility becomes the dominant theme. Men who invested in self development now find themselves in stronger negotiating positions, relationally and professionally. Women who refined expectations and enhanced skill sets do the same. Mutual growth produces healthier partnerships. The absence of constant noise reveals deeper truths. Not every loud claim reflected reality. Not every confident slogan translated into stability. Reality rewards substance. Ultimately, the recalibration underway is not about punishment, but alignment. It aligns expectation with capacity. It aligns desire with discipline. It aligns rhetoric with results. Winter is not an end state, it is a corrective phase. Those who internalize its lessons will shape a more balanced social environment when conditions warm again. Those who resist may find themselves repeating cycles. The air remains cool, but clarity has increased. Illusions have thinned. Fundamentals stand visible. And in that visibility lies opportunity for a steadier future, grounded not in hype, not in resentment, but in measured cooperation and earned stability. As this prolonged correction settles into something resembling a new normal, the most profound transformation is not external, but internal. It is the quiet shift from reaction to intention. In earlier phases of this cycle, behavior was reactive. People responded to trends, to social pressure, to algorithmic validation, to cultural messaging that rewarded spectacle. Now, intention begins to replace reaction. Intention is slower. It requires thought, it requires sacrifice, but it also produces stability. The most durable change in this environment is the recognition that leverage comes from control: control over spending, control over emotional responses, control over time, allocation. Those who cultivate control feel less at the mercy of external fluctuations. This applies equally to men and women. The gender debate becomes secondary to the principle of self governance. In professional life, control manifests as diversified skill sets. Workers who once relied on a single credential now pursue layered competencies. A marketer learns data analytics. A technician studies project management. A freelancer builds multiple income channels. The goal is insulation. Insulation reduces panic when industries shift. It also increases confidence in negotiation. In relational life, control appears as boundaries. Boundaries are not barriers. They are defined limits that protect energy and resources. Clear boundaries prevent resentment. They clarify expectations early. Men who once overextended financially in pursuit of validation now limit expenditures to what aligns with their values. Women who once tolerated inconsistency in exchange for status now prioritize reliability. These shifts reflect intentionality. Another important evolution involves delayed gratification becoming fashionable again. For a long stretch, instant access defined culture. One click purchases, immediate entertainment, rapid dating cycles. Now patience regains prestige, saving for a purchase rather than financing it, building trust over months rather than days, allowing career growth to unfold rather than forcing quick promotions. Patience reduces error. The concept of partnership also gains new framing. Partnership is not rescue, it is reinforcement. When two individuals enter a relationship already disciplined, they amplify each other. When one expects salvation from instability, pressure intensifies. As this truth becomes widely understood, entry into commitment becomes more measured. There is also a reframing of ambition. Ambition once meant visible achievement. Now, it often means quiet progress, paying down debt aggressively, completing certifications without announcing them, training consistently without broadcasting every milestone. The energy once spent signaling is redirected toward building. Another development involves the recalibration of emotional investment. Instead of scattering attention across multiple low probability prospects, individuals concentrate effort on fewer meaningful connections. Depth replaces breadth, quality replaces quantity. Economic stress also encourages realism about consumption patterns. Many discover that a significant portion of previous spending was habitual rather than necessary. Cutting unnecessary expenses does not diminish life satisfaction as much as feared. In fact, simplicity often produces relief. The labor market's evolution further reinforces meritocracy. Those who deliver results consistently gain advantage regardless of presentation. Remote environments reduce reliance on office politics and increase reliance on output. Adaptability becomes key currency. In social dynamics, the decline of exaggerated expectations becomes evident. Grand romantic fantasies give way to practical compatibility. Conversations revolve around shared goals rather than curated experiences. The tone becomes grounded. Another shift is the rise of competence as attraction, competence in managing finances, competence in communication, competence in planning. When uncertainty dominates, competence feels reassuring. This elevates traits that were previously overshadowed by charisma alone. The conversation around fairness also matures. Fairness is no longer framed as equal optics, but as equitable contribution. Contribution varies by context, but clarity about expectations prevents conflict. Mutual acknowledgement of effort fosters respect. Intergenerational wisdom regains relevance. Older couples who weathered economic storms provide examples of durability. Younger individuals study those examples not out of nostalgia, but practicality. The digital landscape continues to adjust. Content promoting sustainable habits gains traction. Audiences gravitate toward financial education, mental resilience, and practical advice rather than outrage. There is also an increasing awareness that high standards require high reciprocity. If one demands discipline in a partner, one must embody discipline personally. This symmetry strengthens trust. The recalibration extends to health routines. Sleep hygiene, exercise, and nutrition are treated as strategic assets. Productivity and emotional stability improve when physical foundations are strong. Another pattern involves long term thinking about geography. Individuals evaluate cost of living, tax structures, and community quality when deciding where to reside. Strategic relocation can transform financial trajectory. The winter phase also reveals the cost of ego. Ego resists adjustment. It clings to past narratives. It avoids admitting miscalculation. Those who release ego adapt faster. Adaptation reduces suffering. Educational systems may respond by emphasizing real world application over theoretical prestige. Apprenticeships and practical certifications grow in appeal. Another important development is the normalization of open dialogue about finances in relationships. Income, debt, savings goals, and spending habits become topics of early conversation. Transparency builds trust. As recalibration continues, a new cultural respect emerges for modest living paired with long term growth. Owning fewer items but possessing greater financial security becomes aspirational. Men who cultivated independence without bitterness re enter relational spaces with balanced expectations. Women who refined ambition without hostility engage with clarity. When both sides operate from grounded positions, tension diminishes. The broader economic landscape may fluctuate, but the habits forged during this period will endure. Savings accounts remain prioritized. Emergency funds remain non negotiable. Career agility remains essential. Another dimension involves redefining success metrics. Instead of measuring life by public applause, individuals measure by internal benchmarks. Progress against personal goals matters more than comparison. The metaphor of winter evolves further. It is no longer perceived solely as deprivation, but as refinement. Cold air sharpens senses, scarcity sharpens strategy. Social circles also refine. Those who resist growth may drift away. Those aligned with discipline draw closer. Community becomes intentional. The recalibration of dating expectations continues. Splitting expenses on early meetings becomes normalized in many circles. Traditional gestures may persist, but they are offered voluntarily rather than demanded. Another transformation involves resilience in the face of rejection. When self worth is internally anchored, rejection loses sting. Individuals move forward without resentment. Professional negotiations also shift tone. Employees aware of market realities approach discussions with data rather than entitlement. Employers reward performance and flexibility. The awareness that stability cannot be outsourced becomes widespread. Governments, institutions, and partners contribute, but individual responsibility remains central. This period also strengthens gratitude for incremental milestones. Completing a savings goal, securing a stable lease, advancing in skill level, each achievement compounds. The narrative that one side inevitably collapses loses strength as adaptation becomes visible. Both men and women adjust, both learn, both refine strategy. As months stretch into years, this recalibration may be remembered not as catastrophe, but as correction. A correction that aligned incentives with reality. Ultimately, what endures is clarity. Clarity about limits, clarity about contribution, clarity about the cost of illusion. The chill in the air has forced reflection. Reflection has inspired discipline. Discipline has produced stability. And stability, once undervalued, now feels like the true measure of progress. As this long season reaches its later chapter, what stands out most is not the tension that sparked it, but the transformation it produced. The noise that once dominated discussion has quieted. In its place, there is something firmer, steadier, more grounded. When illusions dissolve and expectations recalibrate, what remains is character. Character is built in constraint. It reveals itself when ease disappears. In earlier years, momentum carried many forward without demanding introspection. Opportunities seemed plentiful. Validation seemed endless. Choices felt reversible. Now consequences linger longer. Decisions require calculation. The margin for error feels thinner. This shift has compelled maturity across demographics. For men who chose withdrawal rather than constant negotiation, the time spent in solitude has reshaped perspective. Solitude has clarified what truly matters. It has exposed habits that needed refinement and strengths that required cultivation. Those who use that time intentionally have emerged disciplined and self aware. They no longer chase approval reflexively, they evaluate alignment carefully. They protect time and energy as finite resources. For women who once operated within abundant attention economies, the tightening of that economy has invited recalibration. Attention is no longer assumed. Stability is not guaranteed by visibility. The realization that long term security rests on more than presentation has shifted priorities for many. Career advancement, financial literacy, and partnership compatibility are approached with sober awareness. The broader society has absorbed similar lessons. Economic volatility has demonstrated that institutions are not immune to disruption. Corporations restructure, industries evolve, technology accelerates. The only constant is adaptability. Adaptability now commands respect. In relationships, the definition of value has matured. Value is no longer confined to income brackets or aesthetic appeal. It encompasses emotional steadiness, practical competence, shared vision, and integrity. Couples who build on these foundations experience resilience when external pressures mount. There has also been a recalibration of pride. Pride once prevented admission of vulnerability. Now, vulnerability, expressed responsibly, fosters trust. Men acknowledging the weight of expectation demonstrate strength through honesty. Women acknowledging uncertainty demonstrate maturity through realism. Balanced expression strengthens connection. The idea that one gender would inevitably collapse without the other has proven simplistic. What has collapsed instead are exaggerated narratives. Cooperation has reemerged not because of coercion, but because of practicality. Shared rent is easier than solo rent. Shared planning is more effective than isolated guesswork. Mutual support increases survival odds in uncertain environments. Economic discipline has become normalized. Emergency funds are prioritized. Investment education spreads organically. Conversations about retirement planning occur earlier. Young adults who once dismissed such topics as distant now recognize their urgency. Another profound change is the redefinition of independence. Independence no longer means isolation. It means self sufficiency combined with the capacity to collaborate. The strongest individuals are those who can stand alone, yet choose partnership wisely. Social media influence has softened as well. Audiences increasingly recognize the artificiality of curated perfection. Authenticity resonates more than spectacle. Those who present grounded realities build deeper trust. In professional spaces, merit has regained visibility. Output outweighs optics. Employees who adapt to technological tools rather than resist them secure advantage. Continuous learning becomes cultural expectation. Community bonds have strengthened in subtle ways. Shared hardship often unites neighbors more effectively than shared comfort. Informal support systems fill gaps left by strained institutions. These networks foster belonging beyond digital validation. The recalibration has also restored respect for incremental growth. Building slowly and sustainably is celebrated over sudden but fragile ascent. Patience becomes virtue again. In the realm of attraction, compatibility rooted in aligned lifestyle gains prominence. Individuals seek partners whose daily habits mirror their own ambitions. Shared discipline reduces friction. The conversation around fairness has matured into dialogue about reciprocity. Reciprocity does not require identical contributions. It requires proportional effort and mutual acknowledgement. As the season progresses, younger generations observe and internalize these patterns. They witness the cost of overconfidence and the value of preparation. They adjust earlier, potentially avoiding some of the harsher corrections experienced by those before them. There is also a noticeable shift toward humility. Grand proclamations about never needing anyone give way to appreciation for reliable companionship. Similarly, rigid declarations about dominance soften into preference for partnership. Financial caution does not equate to fear. It reflects respect for volatility. Those who plan for uncertainty experience greater calm when disruptions arise. In romantic commitment, deliberation replaces impulse. Engagements follow clear conversations about goals and expectations. Transparency reduces future misunderstanding. The winter metaphor has served as a guiding lens throughout this period. Yet even winter contains quiet beauty. It strips away excess and reveals structure. It demands conservation and rewards foresight. It prepares the ground for eventual renewal. What emerges from this extended recalibration is not despair, but alignment between expectation and capacity, alignment between rhetoric and reality, alignment between desire and discipline. Men who invested in themselves during retreat now approach relationships from strength rather than scarcity. Women who refined priorities during constraint approach commitment with clarity rather than assumption. When strength meets clarity, stability becomes possible. The economic landscape may continue fluctuating, but the habits formed during the season will persist. Savings culture, transparent communication, and balanced ambition are not temporary trends. They are structural adaptations. Another lesson from this chapter is the importance of accountability. External factors influence outcomes, but personal decisions compound over time. Recognizing this empowers rather than diminishes. As the air gradually shifts from sharp cold to tempered coolness, the collective mood stabilizes and panic dissipates. Strategy remains. The intensity that once fueled outrage now fuels focus. Ultimately, the warning that winter would arrive was less about gender rivalry and more about consequence. Every culture that stretches beyond sustainable limits experiences correction. Correction is uncomfortable but necessary. This period has reminded many that stability requires cooperation. It has reminded individuals that validation cannot substitute for preparation. It has reminded society that strength lies not in antagonism, but in alignment. To those who remained through this long reflection, who endured the uncomfortable truths and the sober analysis, there is recognition. The 1 hour gang understands that growth does not occur in convenience, it occurs in challenge. If you're enjoying these angry guy conversations and the clarity they aim to bring, you can show support by buying me a Red Bull using the link in the description. It helps keep the engine running and the conversations flowing. I also want to know what you think about everything discussed. Do you agree? Do you see it differently? Leave your thoughts and share your perspective. Winter has tested assumptions and refined priorities. It has cooled excess and strengthened fundamentals. It has exposed illusion and elevated discipline. What comes next depends on what lessons are retained. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.